Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever it is for you. And welcome to Delivering Hybrid Cloud Services, which is a technology advisory board webinar from World Teleport Association. My name is Robert Bell. I'm Executive Director of WTA. If you're not familiar with us, since 1985, we have been advocating for the commercial interests of teleport operators, as well as promoting excellence in their operations, in their technology practices, and in their business practices. And over on the other side of the screen is an example of this. We do a lot of research working with technology providers, teleport operators, satellite operators, into specific issues that are going to have a big impact on the future of teleport operators. In this case, it's the cloud. So this is our 2021 cloud forecast for teleport operators, updating a 2018 study we did 3 years ago. And it is also the subject of today's webinar. I mentioned the Technology Advisory Board. This is a new institution that we've created for a very specific reason. There are rising challenges, rising opportunities, and of course you're familiar with most of them, ranging from OTT and 5G to IoT, the LEO and MEO constellations, virtualization, the list keeps going. And increasingly they require a truly deep understanding of technology innovation on the part of the business decision maker. What do I do next? How serious are these opportunities? What are the investments required? How do I make smart investments? So we formed this technology advisory board to do exactly that, to provide guidance on those technology advances and on being a smart buyer of technology. Membership in that advisory board is open to leader and patron members of the association that develop, manufacture, and market technology solutions. So if that sounds like you and you're not yet, your company is not yet part of this, please feel free to get in touch with us. You can reach Randall Barney, who is our membership and innovation director, at rbarney@worldteleport.org. Today's agenda could hardly be shorter. It's after this introduction, I will provide some key insights from the report that we've just published back on June 8th. And then we'll go into a panel discussion with questions and answers coming from me, but also we hope very much from you. The work we do, this research, the webinars we put on are made possible by the financial support of what we call the industry leader members of WTA. We're very grateful to them. They include Eutelsat, Intelsat, Kratos, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, and SES, and they really are essential to this work that we do every day of the year. So some takeaways from this interesting 2021 update of our 2018 report. On average, teleport operators have actually been slow adopters of cloud services, and perhaps that surprises you, perhaps it doesn't, but it puts me in mind of Albert Einstein's famous description of what an average means. He says, if you're sitting on a hot stove with your feet in a bucket of ice water, on the average, you're comfortable. And the same thing applies here. That average hides a very wide range of experience between very early adopters and those who are taking their time. Holding back many of the doubters, if you will, are first of all the sunk costs they already have for their on-premise technology, and that's so often, is a factor in deciding when you're going to start making a technology change. But also, and perhaps more profoundly, this was something that really interested me in this report. It is really about the skills and attitudes of managers and employees. We all, in our facilities, we have lots and lots of great veterans with 20, 30 years of experience in RF, and they've come bravely into the digital age with us, but they still don't quite feel comfortable with it. Whereas you get some of our digital natives, younger people in our organizations for whom moving bits has been something they've done from the beginning of their working lives. It's not a big deal. And so you see this bifurcation in the employees, which ends up being having an impact on management decision making. Security continues to be a perceived risk on the part of customers and on some operators as well. And I emphasize the word perceived there because, of course, cloud services have proven more secure than in-house operations. We hear a lot about hacks and ransomware. You don't tend to hear about hacks of these companies because they're putting billions a year into safeguarding their core business of providing both computing and applications. Another interesting takeaway was that when you ask operators, are you making money from cloud? Is this helping your business? Most of them will first say, not really, no. And then they'll stop and say, on the other hand, we don't really know how to track it appropriately. We're doing fixed monthly fees. We're trying to sort of work it out as we go. We only had one contributor to our report that had spent the time trying to figure out how to charge for this. So it may well be one of those factors that's contributing to revenues or may not, and yet it doesn't show up in our accounts. And that's something that's going to have to be addressed going forward, because every single contributor to our report had the same point of view, which is whatever the obstacles may be, whatever doubts they have, cloud is going to be a significant growth factor for businesses of the teleport and the satellite operator. So there's no way to go except forward, and that's why we all need some guidance and help. We're joined today by two panelists. I want to offer the apologies of the gentleman from Microsoft. Unfortunately, at the last minute, he was called away by which happens in technology. But we have with us Christy Damian, VP of Business Development for Advantech Wireless Technology, and also Stuart Doutridge, who's Vice President for Advanced Technology and Business Development at Kratos Defense and Security, both very experienced and very agile presenters of complex issues. And now to our discussion. The first question is, I want to just sort of start with an example. I find that's a good way to get a discussion underway. So, Christy, starting with you, can you give us some examples from your experience of the specific ways that teleport and satellite operators are integrating third-party cloud services into both their internal operations to take the substitute for on-prem computing, but also into solutions for their customers?
Right. So thank you, Robert, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this panel. I would mention two examples of people who have approached us and asked for advice. And they come from different market segments, different industries. So let's say you operate a healthcare organization in the United States. You run a number of hospitals, different research centers, and you already put your applications more or less into cloud. And due to the nature of operation, maybe multiple cloud providers, more than one. High data traffic, 100 megabits, 300 megabits per second. This is not done today over the satellite. This is done over terrestrial. The problem which they see and they perceive is when something happens, and it actually happened, sort of a terrorist attack, a certain region of the country was shut down, and primarily the cellular network is the first to be closed in these kind of events. So the hospitals could not operate because everything is in the cloud. So that brings a big surprise and a big issue to this kind of operation people, and they look now at the satellite. Yeah. So I would say if you are in satellite business, a teleport operator, you need to present your business case to this kind of organization, people, because they need help. You cannot have a hospital going into shutdown because you cannot access your database and your applications, which are in the cloud, right? So at a minimum, a backup over the satellite. Now, if you do a complete backup over the satellite of a healthcare organization of this size, and you want to provide a lot of traffic, you might consider and you might think about the cost, because high data rate in the range of 300 megabits per second for every hospital is a bit high, and it would turn to be expensive. And if you want to do a backup only, then you need to be able to handle traffic on demand. And that's the key word which we see today in everything that is related to this high cloud operation and traffic on demand. And then I will give another example from an organization which is involved in disaster monitoring and alerting system. So if something happens in the in case of, let's say, we have floods, we have massive fires, and we have landslides and hurricanes and this kind of situation, disaster situation, which are very expensive. A lot of these systems operate today also on the cellular network, And unfortunately, the first to go down when that happens is the cellular network. So they have the problem, which even if they collect all this data over the time and put them in different in their on the premises or in the cloud, they cannot access it. So again, satellite is really important here. But once you do satellite, you can cover a large territory. So you can have interconnection between different clouds, because in particular, this type of organization is not using just its own data which they collect. They're using data collected by different organizations, radar, air traffic control, and so on. So they are all in different locations. So satellite is a perfect tool to consolidate all this data and to bring everything into a hybrid solution of different private on the premises locations and clouds distributed over an entire country or even a continent. But the big part which is coming outside of that, that when you start collecting all that data in different cloud location, hybrid type, and if you start sorting the data using machine learning algorithms, you can start writing artificial intelligent early warning formulas, which will not just tell you that there is a flood today here, but that there will be a flood in a week or a month or something like that. So you can predict. That's the big value. That's the big value which brings together this kind of customers, the cloud operators and the satellite, because it's hard to imagine something of this size without having the broad coverage of a satellite and the capacity of the teleports, which are quite unique. So
yeah, that's very interesting, Christy. One of the things that I'm hearing underneath what you're saying, and tell me if I've got this right, is just to a large extent, teleport operators and satellite operators are moving into cloud services because that's where their customers are.
Yeah.
And if they're going to support, you've described disaster recovery, you've described actually two disaster recovery examples. You have to be prepared to support it, otherwise you really don't have a business case for your customer. Is that about right?
It's absolutely right. We see three major driving elements today in the satellite industry, and in particular for the teleport, which will create a large demand for the teleport operators and for the number of teleports. And these are,
yeah. Well, you know, Chris, I'm gonna ask you to wait on that, because I think we're gonna come back to that in our next question. I just want to get Stuart's views in here with, give us again a couple of examples, but don't forget where you are, because I want to come back to that. Stuart?
Yeah, so I think we've all seen there's been several press releases from like SES teaming with Azure and IBM, and Starlink's come out with a partnership with Azure and Google and maybe some others. So I think there's been absolutely some closer relationships developing between the industries. But I think there's two main reasons or things driving that. First is just the cloud technology itself. Cloud technology and moving to a cloud software-based architecture is just a superior, it's sort of the next generation in technology evolution. And it's just a superior architecture. And so you've seen this move across all industries where they're moving their infrastructure to cloud, whether it's private cloud or public cloud, doesn't matter. And satellite is just one of those industries for our own infrastructures that we're going to need to do that. And the reason people are doing that are for the obvious reasons. It's more flexible, it's more dynamic, it's more reliable, it can be more secure, it's very resilient architecture, and it enables higher levels of automation. So virtualizing your infrastructure over time just makes sense. And you mentioned that it's challenging. In your initial presentation, you had a bullet in there about some people are slow to move over because they have existing infrastructure, and it's hard to move the new technology and when to move it. And so if you already have operating technology, it's hard to bite that bullet off. But when you decide to do it, I mean, moving out, building out a software infrastructure-based infrastructure or virtualized infrastructure in the cloud has a lot of advantages over building out a hardware infrastructure. You can build just what you need as you need it, and therefore you can create different business models and procurement models, buying infrastructure as a service, offering infrastructure as a service, tying costs directly to revenues. You see this in the LEO ground market, where basically, if you bring up a LEO constellation these days, very few of them, unless they're massive constellations, are building out their own ground infrastructure, because the LEO ground, there's so many companies, including Microsoft and Amazon, but you also have KSAT and RBC and probably 4 or 5 others that are offering ground system as a service. And it's just, the economics are so much better to use that. So again, enabling the new technologies by digitizing your ground architecture just makes sense. And it allows for new architectures at the service level. The other side of the coin is the content side. And so now you're talking about, the reason people want satellite connectivity, especially over HTS satellites, related to IP data, is they want content. They either want to upload content or they want to download content. And so getting that content closer to the customer by having a direct connection to a cloud provider who's hosting that content, or even hosting that cloud provider's content in your facility, is a valuable way to create a better user experience and a better customer support and service. So that's why I think the business reason why you're seeing the cloud providers and the satellite service providers starting to get closer together, because the cloud providers want their content closer to their customers, and it improves the service that the satellite operators and service providers can provide. So it's a win-win for, actually it's a win-win-win for the cloud provider, the teleport operator, and the customer, the closer you can get that content to the customer.
It's interesting. Thank you for that. I think that was very, very clear. So you've already started down this path of, what does this do for the teleport operator? Christy, I want to come back to you, because you had 3 very specific ideas you wanted to share with us on this.
Well, what I was thinking is that what is actually driving the demand right now for the teleport operator, and we see three segments, and they are all interrelated. One of them is probably the most important, is cloud. Yeah, so the cloud by itself is asking for a lot of data to be transferred with low latency, and it's a very important aspect. And then LEO satellites, they're changing the industry, and they have the LEO satellites, they have the low latency, and they have the capacity to move data from anywhere to anywhere, high capacity. And then 5G, 5G is same as LEO. It's a data pipe, so it will allow the connection between users and users' applications in the cloud. So all these 3, we see them working together. At the end, is you want to have instant access, very reliable and secure to your data and to your applications, wherever they are. All of them are creating for the teleport operator the same sort of a demand. In case of LEO, if you want to move, for example, data from anywhere to anywhere, and you do not know that in advance, in particular in the context of a mobile user who needs to connect to its cloud, you need to be able to handle at the teleport traffic on demand. If we look at 5G, traffic orchestration is mandatory. Yeah, it's not going to be possible to do that kind of traffic without orchestration, and the 5G providers are working on that. They are implementing it. Now, if we look today at what's going on in this LTE and cellular traffic distribution profiles, about 10% of cellular sites carry 50% of traffic, and 50% of sites carry 5% of traffic. And that's what does that mean? Means that it has created a static satellite backhaul capacity distribution, and that is changing with 5G. As 5G is getting into millimeter waves, and small cells will be predominant. Mobility is the key, so you need dynamic traffic orchestration. So again, the teleport needs to be able to handle traffic on demand. Clouds, the traditional clouds, I mean, we use clouds on our facilities, right? We store data in the clouds. In some particular cases, we have to use secure clouds because we handle confidential government programs and so on. And I'm sure it's the same happening everywhere in the world. So we already need to have this kind of hybrid cloud distribution. In many cases, these secure cloud operators will need to be approved by their government. The same like we are approved to handle export control codes, for example, or ITAR. ITAR codes. The moment you put data into them, they need to be brought into ITAR legislation. Now, if you have to bring, and that means a lot of traffic will have to move cloud traffic into national and sovereign borders. But having international mobile and secure clouds at the same time, it's a big challenge. And if we would have our friend and colleague here from Microsoft, he would explain us how is with all these mobile trailers, which Microsoft mobile data centers, which they provide, which are fully secure, specifically for government applications. So these are very important, but it's extremely challenging. All of them need to have satellite operation. They need to be connected somewhere, and most of the time they create partnership with LTE, with the LEO providers. And again, the moment traffic, you do not know how it's going and how it's distributed, you need to have on-demand traffic from teleport operators. So the teleport operator is not just has to handle maybe technology in which it doesn't have expertise, and that is cloud. So he relies on the cloud provider to provide that kind of expertise on the premises. But also needs to start thinking on how he's going to do traffic orchestration, and exactly what Stuart is proposing at Kratos. I know they are very advanced on that, and so on. The problem which brings traffic orchestration is that if you do not know where is traffic going and how much it's going to be, and you move from a static traffic distribution where the link budget is pre-calculated and you know exactly how much you're going to transmit, and you get this fixed revenue. Now suddenly you are no longer in fixed revenue. You are on demand, and because you do not know how much traffic, you need to oversize your network. Otherwise, the teleport will become a limiting factor in the amount of data, because it just doesn't have enough capacity to operate. And that's going to be a pity, because the teleport is going to sit on potential of making a lot of money, but needs to have that capacity. So the teleport needs to invest and to start talking with all these people right now, all the cloud providers.
Yeah, it has become a fascinating puzzle of, you've highlighted so many issues that well, if it were me, I would definitely want to be a slow adopter and think those things through. I want to come back to Stuart for a moment, because Stuart, you raised the great phrase, the direct connection. I mean, there's multiple kinds of relationships you can have with cloud providers, and just talk a little bit more about that direct connect. What's inside that box when you're dealing with most cloud operators?
Sure. So what a direct connect means is you have from your infrastructure literally a direct connection and a high-speed connection directly into a cloud infrastructure. And it provides a couple of things. One, it gives you a high-speed, very secure, dedicated link into the cloud, which is great. The second thing is, since it's a dedicated link, it gives you an extra measure of security, because a lot of people, security is a big concern with the cloud, which is interesting. I always find that funny after having gone to visit a cloud provider. It was like I went, to a data center, and it was like going into a James Bond movie. I mean, it was, they had, retinal scanners on every door. They had a fence 100 yards, a 12-foot fence 100 yards away with barbed wire, with ground sensors and cameras. And you look at the security that they had, and it was just over the top insane. And then you go back and you go have the debate with your IT infrastructure team about whether you want to keep the servers in the back room, or you want to offsource your data to one of those guys who have that over the top security. But I know we'll come back to security, so I'm kind of getting off base here. But yeah, so the Direct Connect provides you just a high-speed connection, secure connection into the cloud provider. And it basically also usually gives you a higher level of reliability than other access points into their infrastructure. And it's usually a low latency link. So again, it's a way to get their content closer to your customers, is probably the easiest way to think about it.
Yeah, in simplest terms, right? I mean, this is a point-to-point fiber link as opposed to going through the internet. Is that about? Yeah. Yep. So it's kind of old school, actually. It's what we used to do for everything. So it's what everything that is old is new again. There's also a lot of these cloud operators also will go a step further and identify you as a consultant partner, where basically you can start getting access to a whole lot of very smart people at their end to devise solutions for your customers. Have I got that about right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you can get access to their tool sets in their cloud, which is, they give some incredible capabilities that you get access to just by being in the cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, got it. I'm interested now. Okay, so Christy has raised a lot of things that teleport operators need to think about in terms of their futures, and I have to say I've already walked away with 3 or 4 things I absolutely didn't know. What are the prerequisites? I mean, if you're talking to a teleport operator or a satellite operator that knows this is important but hasn't yet made decisions, what are going to be some of the technology prerequisites for moving into this cloud services area and being able to support a customer, for instance, that puts a lot of data and processing in the cloud, and you're their backup, or you're their network extension to places that they can't reach otherwise? Christy, why don't you take a first hack at that question? What do you have to have at the teleport?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the teleport operator, they are sitting on a very valuable real estate asset. And I'm talking here about the traditional teleport operators, which are kind of in a radio quiet area, a remote location, surrounded by hills and so on. The traditional way the teleports, and all the teleports which are built on top of a building and have to handle 5G interference right now. These teleports are gated. They have 24/7 security. So it's a great start to have a secure cloud on the premise. And then you should use that real estate to your advantage, because you have it. And then, because we strongly believe, and we actually work right now with companies in operating in artificial intelligence, machine learning, this kind of software applications will decide on how traffic will be routed. These algorithms will look for sites that have the best traffic capacity, the lowest latency, and the lower cost. And so it's critical for the teleport operator to start to engage all the players at this stage. And the limiting factor in all the applications related to cloud, and not only, for the teleport operator will be the available EIRP, how much power it has available. The antenna is more or less fixed, but the power amplifier can be changed. every time when something doesn't work, when somebody, the link is not working, who do they call? They don't kind of call the software companies, they call the RF guys. They call the antenna, make sure it's pointed correctly, and then they call the amplifier guys. And we start to engage. What do you do? How much power, and so on. So we are the first line of support, because we are so important into this. And we could be a limiting factor, but that's not the case anymore. So if you have enough EIRP, you will be able to be selected in this kind of traffic orchestration, best route, lowest latency, lowest cost. So then your teleport will be used. And this to me, it's a very similar concept to what is happening right now with cryptocurrency mining. I believe we're going to have capacity mining. So algorithms will look where is the best traffic route, lowest latency, lowest cost, higher capacity, and they will tend to move the capacity to those teleports. It could be fiber, it could be 5G, but the teleport will be always there. So it's critical.
So, Christy, can I just interrupt you quick? You just said something so interesting. I just want to highlight it a bit. You're talking about a different way of thinking of your business. I mean, typically, the teleport has traditionally, developed an application for a customer, and then you try to find ways to optimize the assets you have so you can serve multiple customers. But you're sort of stepping back and saying you need to think about how to become this optimal capacity provider for sets of applications you may not even yet, you can't possibly know yet. You just know that having these features of low latency, very, very high capacity connectivity, great flexibility are going to be the unique selling propositions of the future. Is that right?
I think that's the way we see it, and it's right. I think the teleport operator will not even have to handle the bandwidth allocation. That's going to be done automatically by the algorithms. So it could move from satellite to satellite, different frequency. It depends on who's available, if it's raining or it's not raining, how loaded it is, what kind of modulation you need to transmit. So it will be physically impossible for the teleport operator to do this kind of switching in real time. So
I remember Serge Van Herk, who used to be the CEO of what was then Newtek, and saying to me when he was on our board, he was saying, yeah, everybody's got to get ready for, you used to have 5 feeds, 20 feeds on your antenna. You can have 10,000 feeds in your antenna.
Correct.
I thought he was joking.
No, we are talking with teleport operators, and if they're telling us if they have to change the frequency planning, they have to hire a subcontractor because it's so complicated.
Yeah, fascinating. Stuart, how about you? I mean, in terms of Christy's named several prerequisites, which end up being, I think, a different way to think about your facility. What have you observed?
Yeah, so I'd like to, as Christy mentioned, I do think the business model is changing, and I really think he touched on a point about automatically scheduling of services. If you look at the telecom world, they do that today. You get off, you hop on a plane, you land somewhere, you turn on your cell phone, it just connects. And it probably not your provider providing that service, but the systems automatically set up that service and pass on your information so that they know what level of service that when you land in that new place to provide you. And so the terrestrial world has figured this out. And that's also why the terrestrial world, if you look at telecoms in general, satellite is, roughly 1% of the telecom world today. And, the other 99% is fiber, Wi-Fi, cellular, all those things. And why satellite has gotten passed by over the last 30 years is that satellite has never really adopted the standards that you see in the other industries to allow this interoperability that Christy mentioned. And I think the industry is finally ready to stand up and start working and integrating much more tightly with the telcos. And so that a telco actually could schedule and orchestrate a service right through a satellite operator system automatically. The way they do it in their system, have their system talk to the satellite operator system and actually orchestrate and schedule that using standards-based ways to pass over the service request and the service, requirements. And so that drives the need for the satellite
I'm sorry,
industry.
Stuart, but that just sounds like a huge lift. How far down that road do you think we are right now?
I don't think we're that far down it yet, but I think we're moving in the right direction. I mean, if you listen to what the big operators are doing, you read, what SES talks about that they're doing, what Intelsat's talking about what they're doing, what Inmarsat talks about, what Telesat talks about when they talk about their LEO system. It's all about tighter integration with the telco providers. And, it's not that, one moving to from an analog to a digital infrastructure and virtualizing your infrastructure will help, absolutely help and make this easier. But again, it's more about being able to take service requests in on an automatic basis and then deploy services, not by using a manual link budget, but by automating these processes that have been done manually for years. And it's also about satellite not being unique and special, but adopting the standards that the rest of the other 99% of the telco industry use every day. And it's actually helped them grow their industry.
Okay, so thank you. We've obviously got more to share here than we can possibly fit into our time. I'm conscious we're about 20 minutes out from our end. I want to turn to the issues of hybrid systems we're going to combine on-prem and off-prem computing capacity and the applications running on it to produce an integrated solution. So I guess we've added a layer of complexity to this, but we've also perhaps addressed some of the specialized either concerns or true needs that our customers have. So if I got this right, that basically, the companies are going to this hybrid solution because they want to get that right mix of control, security, whatever it might be, and the processing power and reach that comes from a third-party provider. Stuart, why don't you address that first?
Sure. So hybrid solutions is what everyone wants. Because you don't want to get locked into one of the service providers and get your data into their system and not be able to get it out. But it is challenging, because now it depends what you mean by hybrid solution. If you mean private, your own personal cloud along with the cloud providers, I think most everybody has gone that way to some level. Everybody has their own infrastructure that they're using, taking advantage of cloud technology, and then has started using some public cloud infrastructure. And that's a very common way and makes a ton of sense. And then you can figure out what data you want to control in your own facility and what data you want to allow out into the cloud, whether that be a secure cloud or a straight public cloud. And that all comes down to, with most people, it's all about security and access to data and speed to that data. Like for us, we have certain things that because of, just like Christy said, we have government customers and contracts where that data can't go out to a public cloud or even a secure cloud. We have other data that in other systems that we do a lot with on secure cloud systems, and then other information and things we do in a public cloud. And so we architect our solutions based on that to drive our, both our security, but our costs. And it's a trade-off between, costs and security. And, with the US government's new CMMC requirements, this is becoming a, much more, I would say it's always been a big deal, but it's being highlighted by the CMMC requirements and the auditing requirements that's going to bring. And so it's driving industry to really think hard about, where they keep their data, why they keep it there, and therefore in the costs that generate.
Right, because the bad guys keep getting better and better, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And, in a lot of ways, CMMC has pushed us to move more of our data to secure cloud and off-prem because of some of the security that you inherit with a cloud provider like Azure or AWS on their secure cloud. You can adopt a lot of their security that answers the mail for a lot of what you need to do. Now, it's not a magic bullet and it's not going to solve all your security problems. You still have, things that you're responsible for. And usually when you see these cloud breaches, it's not, breaches of data in the clouds. It's usually not the cloud guys who got breached. It's usually, the customers didn't actually control their access to the data or their software well enough in there. I look at what the cloud providers is like a cup or a glass, meaning they give you a solid base and walls all around it, but the top's still open, and you're responsible for controlling that top and how data ingresses and egresses and what you're putting in there. And with that cup answers a lot of questions and solves a lot of your security issues that you don't have to go build out by moving into that type of infrastructure.
Yeah, when this conversation turns to security, I always like to remind people that the first major customer for AWS was the Central Intelligence Agency. so they had a reasonable amount of confidence in it. Christy, how about you in terms of this the hybrid solution? Is that becoming the sort of core offering, and what's good and bad about that?
It is a core offering, and I fully agree with Stuart. We have to do the same. We can allow certain applications which are not critical to be in the public cloud, but certain applications and data has to be stored in secure clouds. And it's not only when we say secure, is because Google says that, or IBM says that this is a secure cloud. Don't worry. It has to be approved by the government. So it has to go through a very serious analysis and vetting process. And most of the time, these clouds physically are in country located, not outside of the country. And here's the opportunity for the teleport operator. Because if you are in the same national boundaries and if you choose to be, just a data pipeline and charge per use, gigabyte and so on, it's fine. But if you want to add value added, why not locate a cloud service, run the application from there and become a service provider? And if somebody needs a secure cloud offering, you probably can do that too. It might be a little bit expensive, but some customers will be willing to pay for that. Because I'll tell you for sure, here in Canada, there is a big shortage of these secure cloud providers. They are not all over the place. It's hard to find them, and it's expensive. So it is an opportunity. It's a valuable opportunity for the teleport operator, for the telco companies to migrate into these kind of services because they are essential.
And you're really talking about data sovereignty. I can't say it that all of a sudden, but that's what we're talking about, is that we have a requirement to locate our data within a national boundary. So I just want to make sure. Right, yeah. Yeah, it's huge, in fact. And if you talk about expensive, at least it's not space belt with putting the data centers in orbit, but that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah, I think it is a major opportunity, but again, it requires a different kind of design approach, which we've already talked about. Which brings us to another question, or related question, and we'll come back to you, Christy, because, all right, so Stuart said it's hard to do this, and so I'm just wondering if we can explore a little bit what some of the challenges are of creating that hybrid service which integrates seamlessly with cloud and also, of course, lets you hope integrate seamlessly with your customer.
It is hard indeed, and it is expensive. But this is the kind of teleport bridge that is being built right now by Microsoft, by Amazon, by Google, by SpaceX. These are the types of teleports which are being built right now, fully automated, with a large capacity, traffic orchestration, and so on, and with cloud in the proximity of their own clouds or with the cloud co-located. So that's the way technology goes. You cannot stop it. Then we have the traditional teleport operators, which were in the broadcast industry, video, data, data transmission, internet service, and cellular backbone. They need to invest a lot of money, but I don't think it's in their capacity at the beginning, unless they are maybe owned by a satellite operator, they are owned by an SES or Eutelsat or so on. But the private teleports, they can still benefit from their location, because their location is outstanding. And they can work together with these cloud providers and 5G and telco providers and engage them. We come from different industries. People who are expert in 5G, they don't necessarily know the satellite. And
nobody knows satellite.
And and people in cloud business even less. What I particularly like extremely is the fact that there are these two technologies. One is software and one is electromagnetic waves. Both of them you cannot see, but they put the world in motion. Yeah, so we have extremely beautiful development in software, in capacities and application and so on, but they have to be matched by developments in radio hardware, in ways of changing frequencies of signals, amplifying them, uploading them, downloading them, make sure that the linearity is there, make sure that we can have very high peak to average ratio, make sure that the noise level is very low, make sure that we don't create interference. So the whole RF business, it's so important and so critical for the teleport, and it is at least as important as the software and the other part. But together they make a powerful tool. And you don't get this kind of expertise easily. I know for a fact that we've been working for more than 30 years here in Atlantic on RF technology, solid state 100%, and it takes 10 years to get a good RF engine. And then it's an incredible amount of knowledge that you need. You're actually processing waveforms which are generated by mathematical formulas. So you need to understand how the amplifier is modifying them and how they interact and so on, how to not create big error rates and interference and so on. So it is an extremely complex field, not only on electronics, but on computing, on mathematical, on physics, on mechanical and heat dissipation and so on. So we do have that expertise, but what we see today, because the traffic is going up so high because of these applications like cloud in particular, if we used to sell a 100-watt amplifier 20 years ago, and that was a massive amplifier, 500 pounds, we sell today 5 kilowatts, 8 kilowatts, 10 kilowatts, which are power levels unheard in the past in satellites. You would never use something like this in a satellite operation. But now you need it. You need it. So it's a new breed of RF technology which we have been developing, and it's a new breed of teleport that is coming along. Of course, together with software from Microsoft and Kratos and all these wonderful companies.
It is an amazing picture you painted again. I think you got a little touch of the poet there, Christy. I've got to say, you put it in ways that I can understand. Stuart, to come back to the core issue of the challenges of combining this on-prem and off-prem capacity and applications and making it all work together seamlessly. What's your view?
When I said it's hard, what we found that it's like any other time that you take advanced technology from one one generation to the next. It's very hard to set up. It's hard to set up because it's a new technology. It's a completely different learning curve. It's a different skill set. You know, we've had to hire people from outside of our industry and bring them in who have that understanding and knowledge. And the other thing is they speak a different language. You know, they talk about containers and Kubernetes and spinning up nodes and, you know, all these things that are, and we talk about, EIRP and G over T, and, we have our own language. But it's funny when you get with people who know cloud, it literally is a different language. And it's funny, we've actually joked about trying to make a translator, between the different technology, because you have the telecom, 4G, 5G technologies, and, and they talk about G node Bs, and people are like, well, what's a G node B? Well, and somebody goes, well, it's like a modem. Oh, okay, it's a modem. No, I don't know what a G node B is. And it's how you have this translation with just the tech that comes with the technology. And that just takes, again, it's time and a learning curve and translation. But then once you start getting into the new technology and getting it developed, it's like, then it's like you look back and you're like, how did I do it the old way? This is so much better. It's so much more advanced. It gives such capability and flexibility that, then you start looking back and you're like, wow, boy, you remember in the Stone Age where we didn't use cloud? It's like, so I think it's just like any other technology update and evolution of technology. But it is a brand new technology, and it's significantly different. So do not underestimate the learning curve and the language barriers that you'll have in adopting the new technology.
I think that's really, really good advice. Language is a real thing. We're getting low on time, so I want to jump to our last question, because it's something that it's a persistent question. I don't know if it's a real concern that people really should have, but in the back of people's minds, when you talk about an AWS with their incredible, for instance, media processing suite of applications, the extent to which the cloud providers can be an alternative to the teleport is, I think, in the back of the mind of many, many executives trying to decide what to do about this technology. What's your view about that? Is that a real concern that people should be carrying around with them, or is it one of those things that, well, yes, if you sit there and don't do anything, eventually somebody will take away your lunch money, but as long as you're doing your job of innovating, you should be safe enough? Christy, what do you think?
Well, I personally, I don't know of any other opportunity better than this in the last 10 years for the satellite, for the teleport operators, because they have been suffering. We'll always see year after year, there's, more of revenue from the teleport operator going to somebody else. And it could be cellular, it could be fiber, and so on. So cloud, the amount of revenue which can be generated by cloud services is quite high. I don't think we can afford at the teleport level to ignore it. You want to be part of it, and I understand that there is a language issue here, as Stuart put it. We speak different languages, but we need to learn that language, and we need to bring those, maybe sometimes those young kids who speak that kind of language and can teach us, how to modernize these teleports. Sometimes that's also an issue. They have the traditional teleport had a great run. It was great business, good revenue, and so on. And somehow we took success for granted. And many teleports lacked the investment infrastructure and modernization and so on. But that is changing right now. It actually started to change with Ultra HD, when suddenly people like to see Ultra HD, and that's a lot of traffic. And then, hey, we need to modernize our teleports, so let's do that. Now the cloud is putting the same pressure, but probably on a couple of orders of magnitude higher. And bringing new technology on the teleport premises and new applications, so on. Why not? I mean, we need to adapt. And
that's a very exciting view. And I'm sorry, just because of time, I'm going to leave you there with you and ask Stuart for his comment.
Yeah, I agree with Christy that I actually think it's an opportunity. Again, it really gets back to the cloud providers have content that they're trying to get out to the end users, whether that be, and satellite is just one of the better ways to get connectivity to places where there's not connectivity today. And so whether that's via cell backhaul or other applications, it's all about getting that content closer to the customer and improving that end customer's user experience. And so if that's via having a direct connect into a Azure or AWS cloud, that's one way to do it. If that's actually hosting an AWS or Azure cloud into your facility, that's another way to do it. Or maybe you're not hosting their infrastructure, you're hosting your own and but providing content out of there. But it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about creating the better end user experience, whether the customer's mobility, whether it's cell backhaul, doesn't matter what it is. It's all about creating that better user experience. And that's what's going to drive, your business, and that's what's going to, drive your growth.
Well, excellent. Thank you. I just am so grateful to both of you for this session. This has, I think, been very eye-opening, and it's put things in plain English that I think every teleport operator needs to hear right now. So my thanks and great gratitude to Christy Damien and Stuart Dowdridge for joining us today and sharing their points of view. If you've been listening to us, I ask that you take a moment to fill out our online survey after the webinar, because your feedback helps us make each one of these a little bit better than it was before. You can go to our website and download a copy of the report 2021 Cloud Forecast for Teleport Operators, which is free to WTA members. And that brings us to the end of our time together, almost. Just a quick update on what's coming up next. In July, we'll be publishing a report on the topic that both Christy and Stuart addressed: service automation and orchestration. How do you set this? How do you take your facility out of the plug and the Ernestine, the operator plug era, into a truly automated area that lets you access a lot more opportunities? Smarter selling in a virtual world in September, looking at some of the really remarkable innovations that forward-thinking companies introduced during the pandemic to get over the barriers of virtual selling, right? They had to do it, and we're going to keep doing it. So how can we do it smarter? And finally, in October, how to profit from customers' digital transformations. Your customers are going through immense changes themselves. If you can help them and make money doing it, it's definitely a direction to go. So thank you very much for joining us for Delivering Hybrid Cloud Services, a Technology Advisory Board webinar. And for WTA, this is Robert Bell.